Thanks very much, and hi everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm the founder of DiversiFi, and specifically today I'm going to be speaking about upgrading DeFi from dial-up mode to broadband, and how that's going to let us onboard mainstream users to access DeFi opportunities for the first time. So, DeFi sort of was born into Ethereum to start with, and that led to huge amounts of experimentation over the last 2 or 3 years in creating all sorts of applications, from decentralized exchanges to decentralized borrowing and lending protocols, derivatives, and much more. But as the adoption has grown, lots of barriers have been hit, particularly around the speed of Ethereum and also the cost. And that's grown massively as the sort of transaction throughput has become congested. And so for most people, DeFi very much feels at the moment like it's in this dial-up mode where it's not possible to do most things and it's not open to most people because it's just simply too expensive. And so during this presentation, I'm going to be speaking about our experiences of building on layer 2 and talk about the example of DiversiFi and how we've gone from an Ethereum-based application to one that no longer is limited by the throughput of the blockchain, but still has all the benefits that it brings. And then I'm going to be speaking in particular about the overall industry and how it's going to migrate from this dial-up mode to broadband mode, and why, in my view, this is the biggest change and biggest step change that's happened in the entire cryptocurrency industry since the birth of smart contract platforms, because of what it's going to enable and how it's going to allow so many more people to start using everything that's being created with smart contracts and in DeFi. And then I'll come at the end to speak more about what we see as being DiversiFi's place in that overall movement. So to start off, let me talk about where DiversiFi came from. So we actually first started working on what we've got live now in 2018 or 2019, and sort of beginning of 2019, which was a decentralized exchange prototype. It looked, as you can see here in the slide, like a traditional exchange with an order book and some prices and tickers. But every single trade that you did from your own Ethereum wallet, and transactions were broadcast to the Ethereum blockchain and settled there. And so it allowed us to really demonstrate the fact that you could do decentralized trading with an order book. And it was sort of a really impressive sort of first use case for this. But the sort of cost was that because every single trade individually had to go onto Ethereum blockchain, there was $1 to $20 of transaction fees. And that continued to grow. The more usage we saw of Ethereum, the higher that got. And the other problem was that actually every trade might take up to 3 minutes for a transaction to get included into the blockchain, settled, and then allow you to trade again. And so whilst it was great for onboarding some initial users and we saw some good early adoption, this isn't something which, especially when you compare to the way that most centralized exchanges worked, could really sort of stand up to the requirements of most users. And so early on at that point, we started looking at different layer 2 technologies. And layer 2 wasn't a term that was really used back in 2019, but now is sort of very widely spoken about throughout the cryptocurrency ecosystem. But what it really involves is taking lots of the transactions off directly from kind of layer 1 blockchains like Ethereum and batching them together in a certain way so that you can put a much smaller amount of data onto the main chain without losing any of the security properties. And initially we explored several solutions, but we ended up working with a team called Starkware, who are Israeli based, and really had created what we saw as being the most viable solution to get us live as fast as possible. And the way that that solution works is using something called zero-knowledge proofs, which allows you to take thousands of transactions and generate a cryptographic proof which has a close to constant size. So that means that the amount of data stays the same no matter how many transactions you have in those proofs, and then submit that to Ethereum where it gets proved. And the benefits of this was that we could suddenly do not just tens of transactions per second, but hundreds of transactions per second at a potential cost of 1 cent per transaction, which was really the goal we were going for. And so in middle of last year, we launched the kind of broadband version of DiversiFi, which used this technology to take all the transactions of users and put them onto Ethereum in a much more efficient and cost-effective way. And so since then, we've seen $500 million of trading volume, more than 660,000 transactions settled, and a much, much lower cost per transaction. And that's getting lower every day. So the more transactions we have, the lower the cost becomes. And transaction sort of throughput is almost instant in that users can trade straight away again. And so it's a complete change in the way that the experience felt for users, but without having to make any compromises on self-custody. All users hold their own funds and use MetaMask or hardware wallets to trade. And you get the same security guarantees as you would get from using a decentralized exchange that's directly on Ethereum without those costs. And on top of that, because of these other sort of benefits in terms of the flexibility and the lower cost, we've actually been able to expand the offering to not just include trading, but also sending funds to others, earning yield through lending protocols, and swapping funds in a really simple way. And so the benefits of Layer 2 are not just on the speed and cost, but also on the kind of overall user offering that can be given. So that's just one example. And to do that was a lot of work because we were early on, we were one of the first to use Layer 2. But what we're seeing now is that the number of ways that this can be achieved is really grown. And this year, there's been a real blossoming of Layer 2 technology solutions. And so we're getting to a point where not only is main chain Ethereum getting more and more expensive and sort of almost impossible to use for most people, but the technologies to sort of mitigate that and allow people to migrate are just becoming really mature. So I want to zoom out for a second and sort of view the context that we're in overall. So the kind of biggest thing that we're all within is this crypto revolution. It's 12 years old. It started off with Bitcoin. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks was in the first block of Bitcoin, and the solution was a decentralized internet money for which is based on maths rather than on power and centralized printing of money by governments. The second wave of this was then DeFi, and this is really only 4 years old in terms of applications, but that came on the back of Ethereum and programmable money, the ability to create smart contracts which could interact with each other with no middlemen between protocols. And the problem we saw with both of these two revolutions was that cryptocurrencies, at least that first wave of cryptocurrencies, don't scale. Bitcoin could do 7 transactions per second. Ethereum could do maybe 12 transactions per second. But this is in a context where the use case for DeFi has kept growing. It's been on an exponential rise. Hundreds of billions of dollars of assets now held in DeFi, or getting close to 1 million users who are accessing DeFi opportunities from their wallets. But if the supply of transactions is fixed and this demand is growing, of course, what we see is that blockchain fees go up. And on any given day now, transactions are costing in the range of $50 to $200, which is just useless for a lot of people unless you're already extremely wealthy and a cryptocurrency whale. And so that's really where Layer 2 technologies are coming in. And Layer 2 is, I think that the kind of most of the activity is currently happening on Ethereum, but we also have Lightning Network on Bitcoin and several other Layer 2 technologies which are looking to be sort of cross-chain agnostic. And the basic concept is it's going to allow us to make everything that's being built here scale to 7 billion people, not just the small 1 or 2 million that may be currently able to access all these opportunities. So DeFi must be fast, it must be cheap, and it must be frustration-free. And this technology and this wave of innovation is really the newest. It's only maybe 1.5 years old since this started to be possible in a production-grade application. But the benefits are so clear, and that it's really going to be, I think, the biggest change since DeFi and Ethereum 4 years ago. So what do those technologies look like today? This is from layer2beat.com, which has a list of currently live Layer 2 applications. And we're seeing kind of a range of different types, different solutions to this. And one of the great things about the Ethereum ecosystem is that it's not top-down driven. It's very organic and decentralized. And so we've seen all sorts of teams start to create alternative solutions with different trade-offs and different risks and different benefits. And so today, there are some like Arbitrum and Optimism, which are based on optimistic rollup and have EVM compatible environments, but others like DYDX and DiversiFi on this list, which are very application specific. And there's kind of different levels at the moment in terms of maturity of these solutions. Some are already very secure, others are still in a mode where they're able to be upgraded and don't have the full security of Ethereum yet, but will do in time. And so we could split these solutions into two sort of different camps, really. One is those that are chasing EVM scaling. EVM is the environment that we see on Ethereum where you can deploy any smart contract, and several are going after that, where it really should mirror exactly how Ethereum works. Developers can deploy any solution. It's great for experimentation, but you don't maybe get the full scaling benefit and optimization that you could get from layer 2. And then on the other side, we have application-specific scaling solutions like Aztec for privacy, DYDX for derivatives, and DiversiFi for swapping and trading. And those really get to much, much lower cost per transaction, higher throughputs, but don't allow any developer to deploy whichever smart contracts they want. And so Diversify's place in this movement is that we really want to help you make the most of DeFi and unleash the potential of open finance for everyone. Now, what that means is that we think that DeFi should be accessible to not just those who are already wealthy, not just those who can understand the technology and get really deep into the weeds of all sorts of different blockchain and bridges, but be able to come to one place and do everything they want to do in DeFi from the security of their own wallet and without the sort of cost of blockchain. We're backed by some of the really top supporters in the industry, three top exchanges, Ethfinex, Blockchain.com, and OKX, many top VCs and funds, and several other partners, and many DeFi founders and angels. And where we see that we really fit here is that we want to be kind of the interface within this overall revolution between DeFi and layer 2, and help everyone to start to access those opportunities through it. But today there are still many challenges to doing that. So the first is frustration, a lot of failed transactions and cost, a fragmented user experience, particularly as many of these layer 2 solutions emerge. They're all very separate and disparate. So if you move funds to one, it's hard to get funds to another without going back via Ethereum and paying high cost. And there's an educational gap about why these are needed, what they're really achieving, and where the security comes from. And then the biggest thing is around wallet standardization, because right now all wallets have been designed for Ethereum, but each of these different solutions has different experiences. So what we currently offer is a way to easily swap, send, and lend. And so there's already 100 different assets which are available, no gas fees to swap, and aggregated liquidity, and that you can get a great price either from other exchanges on outside of DiversiFi, or from launching in a few weeks' time, our AMM pools, which allow anyone to provide liquidity on any token, which will really allow the kind of range of what's available on layer 2 to grow fast. And so that's where we are today, but where we want to be in 3 years is a DeFi platform that could completely replace a bank account, in that from your mobile, you could be managing your funds, able to constantly be lending them out, spending them, and swapping them for other currencies without ever needing to go through the traditional financial system. Now, that wasn't something that was possible with DeFi so far, and it isn't possible today. But we're getting to a point where we can see technologically how that will be possible. And the main barriers are going to be in terms of helping to onboard people as quickly and easily as possible and make it super simple to start using this. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope that was a useful and informative talk.